Deja vu. Have we all been here before? Or have some of us been here before? And if so, why the heck did you come back to this place? So, if you haven't guessed already by the title, we're going to be talking about reincarnation. And no, I don't mean coming back as a slug if you've been a bad boy or girl or whatever else. I'm not entirely sure where this is going to go because
Spoiler
this is a
alert.
very, very, very complex subject that goes over the heads of, I think, the vast majority of people, even people that believe in reincarnation. And I suppose we should start off with that. Is reincarnation a belief, or is it literally just one of those things which you just naturally come to that conclusion? What would you say, Chris?
I suppose lots of people are interested about, and I suppose otherwise it wouldn't be in every culture on the planet, this curiosity that what happens after we die. And I suppose different cultures have to find a way to explain that. Um, Obviously, you know, the Abrahamic religions, shall we say, have heaven and hell, and most of them are content with that, I guess is the word I should use, contentment.
Well, I don't know. The Christians had reincarnation until is it the Second Council of Constantinople kind of wrote it out
Yeah,
as
Byzantine.
heresy. There was kind of little bits and pieces. But I don't know. I mean, when it comes to reincarnation, it's one of those things, I think, because you really, if someone can explain it, you know that they understand intermediate magic,
Yeah, I guess.
I
Yeah.
think. So is it fair to say, because I think we both take the stance that obviously reincarnation is a thing, even if it's not this, we don't view it as the same thing as what Blavatsky or some whatever pagans nowadays are spouting about it. But would it be right in saying that it is a thing, and if you understand it, or if you don't understand that it's a thing, you probably haven't gotten out of the foundation magical class?
Yeah, I think that's safe. But then also for me, I suppose it's different on the basis that I would have to discredit a lot of what I remember, to actually say that reincarnation doesn't exist, because I can't explain any other way as to why I would have those memories. So I guess for me, it's a case of, like I do with explaining psychic ability, you have that trouble of, well, I have two choices. One is accept that there is something else I need to find a way to explain, or check me in now with the men's with the white coats. Like those,
Yeah.
those are the two choices
Send
that
him
you
to a
have.
mental asylum.
Those are, to me, the basic need, and the fact that I don't check, believe it or not, most of the list for being, uh, medically insane. Um,
What about eccentric?
Eccentric is probably the limit of rude, just rude. Anyway, um, yeah,
I don't know.
deja
People
vu.
say I'm eccentric. I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah, but most people would be, if they knew you, they would describe you as eccentric. I don't think eccentric is when there's neighbours near here that walk around in a top hat all day, even though they're not going to a wedding. Like, that is eccentric in my book. I don't think I fulfill the category for eccentric in how I look. I may be in some of my views, but not
No, you're
necessarily
right.
from my look.
You're right. You're just plain old crazy.
Exactly, exactly. I don't think I'm
But
interesting enough
anyway,
to be eccentric.
we're going to get off topic. So
Sorry, yeah.
I suppose what is reincarnation for a start? Because there's a lot of people that will just think that, oh, well, that's that thing where if you're good, you come back as a human and one that's got a better life. And if you're bad, you come back as a slug.
Yeah.
So what is reincarnation? What is the ideal of reincarnation?
Well, to me, I always base it on, I'm going to misquote now. Is it Newton's third law or something like that? Matter cannot be made or destroyed. It is simply transmuted. Have I picked the wrong one? That is one of Newton's, right?
I think it's energy. I'm not sure if it's matter,
So,
because you've
oh,
got
sorry.
antimatter.
Yeah, sorry, energy.
So it would be
Did I say
energy.
matter? I didn't mean to
Yeah.
say matter. Um,
Never mind. It doesn't matter.
Rude, funny, not. Um, yeah, so energy cannot be made or destroyed, it's simply transmuted. So to me, you've got to do something with that spark of life that makes a person. Whether or not you call that a soul or not is dependent on your denomination, I guess. But to me, it's that part. It's that part of what makes every living thing live. And that has to go and has to be reused because it can't be destroyed. So therefore, it must be turned into something else. So whether or not that soul has multiple lives and therefore can experience multiple existences in the physical realm is what I would consider reincarnation to be. So not necessarily that you spend all lives as a human. I'm not sure I feel that is a category that I would put myself in. I have more issue with the kind of Eastern idea of it when it mixes up with a caste system. Somehow its purpose is to punish or reward. I have issue with that. I also have issue with anyone that thinks that being a tree or being a frog is somehow less than being human. To me, if you were going to go in any kind of progression, you'll learn more with their connection to nature as an animal than you would ever learn from being human. So I have issue with that too. Does that make sense, or am I rambling?
No, I think that does make sense. But at what point do you really understand reincarnation? Is it at the point where you understand the soul and what the soul is and how it works, essentially? Is that the point where you can come to the conclusion that, yes, I understand how reincarnation works because I understand how that works? Or is it the opposite? Does understanding or learning about
Get
reincarnation
you
teach you more
closer.
about the soul? Yeah, to understanding that.
Yeah, I'd probably lean towards that, I guess. I think the soul as a thing, an entity or whatever you want to call it, um, is probably too vast a concept for most to understand. And I think even those that have memories, etc., would still struggle to verbalize what exactly a soul is and what its purpose is, etc., etc. Um, I suppose what would confuse most people is I don't tie up learning with purpose. So I think
Yeah.
lots of people think, oh, well, I've got to learn this, this, and this, and I've got to complete this checklist to fulfill my purpose. I struggle with that based on the fact that we're all just cogs in a machine. So existence does not therefore require purpose other than to continue moving forward or backward, or
Yeah.
so it's all just part of the engine. So whether or not, yeah, so I find this whole tying reincarnation with purpose and with good or bad and punishment or reward very difficult to
Yeah.
absorb.
So what purpose does it serve to understand reincarnation then? Because when it comes to magic, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it, what where's the kind of ceiling there? Where is the case of, well, really, in order to do that, you've kind of got to understand how reincarnation works or have tinkered with it, because that's an interesting one, because you'll see lots of magical practitioners that are quite good at certain things and quite knowledgeable, but they didn't really have the first indication of how reincarnation works or have any experience with it. And it definitely shows in their magical practice and what they're able to overcome. The paradigm maybe that they view things through or in.
I don't know. To some levels, I think it's only really useful to people like ourselves who are using it for diagnosis.
Yeah.
Or, self-development is probably one way to use it, but the only people that are actually having to deal with the concept is more so the person diagnosing it. So I kind of almost feel like it's a doctor level need to understand in order to help, rather than, I don't think you necessarily need to understand it to necessarily progress yourself.
No, you don't have to understand it yourself in order to progress through, if you're assuming that it's a kind of like a cycle, or you can explain the way that you normally explain it. But from the point of the magical practitioner, from our experience, from professional witchcraft, from professional magic, when we've got clients that have a problem, is normally very, very apparent if that problem comes from this current life or from a different one, or if they're stuck in some kind of cycle. The problem is, it's difficult to explain to someone how you come to that, how you understand that and how you've come to that conclusion without them understanding reincarnation and stuff, to the point which, there's only so much time we've got during a consultation. Normally it's a case of diagnosing them and fixing it. We don't necessarily explain in great detail because it's a little bit too complicated. Like, this podcast probably going to go on for ages.
It's one of those, you want to know, you need to very quickly gauge what level they're at and what understanding they actually do have prior to deciding how you give them advice, I guess. We're used to doing that, but not necessarily everybody is. But like I say, I don't think it's always necessary. I think it's only a problem when you have those clients that have oaths or contracts from previous lifetimes that is really having a negative impact on the current one. Although, to be fair, if you follow a lot of these, I'm going to say it, insta witches that talk about kind of oath breaking, like it's really a popular subject over the last couple of years. I don't know if you've noticed that, where
it's big business. It's been big business for me.
And I'm kind of like, well, yes, most of us have got them on some level if you've been around a few times. But equally, there are just as many new souls as there are older ones, mainly because of the basis that, if you think about, to put it in simple terms, population increase says that there are technically, even on a math level, there are more bodies here than have ever been on this planet. Therefore, there are going to be, by chance and by simple math, more people that are new to this than there are in previous times you were here, if you were one of these that have been here multiple times. Which is obviously going to be a concept some people don't like, the fact that they've not been here before and that they're new to this.
Well, I mean,
they all want to be Cleopatra,
Oh yeah, I know. They all want to be Cleopatra or Mother Mary, whatever, Jesus or something. I don't know. But no, I think that the problem that we have, certainly in paganism and neo-paganism in the modern world, is the fact that everyone's supposed to be entitled to their own opinion, even if it's wrong. And to say, I understand something and you're wrong, is not one of those things that's popular and is considered quite rude. Now, it's difficult to say it without sounding like an a-hole, but we've got a lot of experience with dealing with issues of reincarnation. So that's why we come to the conclusion, because it's blatantly obvious for us, because we deal with it on a day-to-day basis, literally. That it exists.
For us, it's not a question
to get that across.
I think that solved to the problem. It's just something that you just accept has happened or is happening. Whereas
and you can use it to your advantage. And that's the problem. When you talk about gatekeeping, and there's all this words about getting thrown around about gatekeeping and keeping knowledge and stuff secret, and we talk about advanced magical practice as being something that you can teach someone, that they have to discover for themselves. Reincarnation fits into that perfectly,
Yeah.
because you can, like, we'll do a half decent job, I think, of explaining it at some point during this podcast, probably during the extended version on the Patreon, just because, you know, we've got to clear up the basics first before we go in depth. But it's a case of, unless you know, you don't know, and it can't be explained to you.
Yeah.
So it's a real difficult one, because there's a very clear boundary there, which is like, I just want to understand. Tell me, explain to me how the universe works. Explain to me how everything works. This is one of those things where you can kind of try to explain, but you're really not going to understand.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there are a lot of people that will try to explain to people that aren't very experienced, like taking a trashy old kind of term, neophytes.
Yes.
So people at the very beginning of their journey that don't know a lot about magic, explaining to other neophytes
Yeah.
something more complicated than they can understand themselves. And you'll get that. And the problem is that when it comes to reincarnation and people discussing it, all you'll get is, well, I did some progression, I did some I went under a trance state and remembered a past life, or I see past lives and that sort of thing. Understanding reincarnation isn't really about understanding past lives. That's not really important.
No.
To understand reincarnation, you need to go a stage further, and you need to reconnect with all of those lives and live every life you've lived in the past, every life you're currently living, and every life you're going to live in the future simultaneously.
Yeah.
Is like a network. You're networking all of those lives together. And what it is the people that say, I remember this, I remember I was Cleopatra, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's no use to that,
No.
you see. That's why people will go around and say, well, this is what I believe in. Oh, I don't believe that, but I can respect your opinion. No. When you really grasp reincarnation, it becomes an extremely important tool. And much like many tools, there are only a select few are capable of understanding or wielding. It does hold an immense amount of power with that. So, again, we're not saying this to sound weirdly elitist, because there's no reason why anyone listening here can understand reincarnation by knowing it and living it and experiencing it. It's just the fact that listening to this, you will be in the camp of, I either understand it, or I'm not really sure. I don't know what it is, and I'm not entirely sure that it's a thing. Once you understand it and you start working with it as a tool, you can't really go back from that. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. Because it goes back to what I was saying before. It's those that want to go and have past life regression because they think it's going to give them some kind of insight into purpose. And that's what I think it always goes back to. Oh, I need to have done this, because they need that checklist that they can gauge self-worth from. And I think part of that is the problem. Rather than just experiencing, knowledge of past lives, previous lives, the future, the past, all those things, what's the purpose of knowing those things? Because if you're not going to do with anything with that information, then what's the point of knowing them? And you knowing that you were a warrior in some previous lifetime or Queen of Egypt, like, what actually impact does that have? Because you can't have all that gold back, or you can't necessarily going to wake up tomorrow with knowing how to wield a sword. I'm not saying none of that is not possible. What I'm just saying is that what actual change is that going to make in your current
what
life?
Change have we made then? What because we've had to deal with reincarnation for clients on a simple basis, and I think we've probably dealt with it in more complicated ways. So from simple consultation, what is the most simplest I suppose, reincarnation type work that clients come to you for, that it's been necessary to really delve into that. Because I can think of one or two consultations that we've done together in the past,
Yeah,
but you know,
I don't know. Most of the clients I see are problems in the current life. So there's no reason
yeah,
for you to look beyond that, because if they've got money, money issues or basic requirements, those are basic fixes that they can fix themselves. And the
yeah.
way that we deliver teaching is designed for them to fix it themselves rather than us fix it for them. Um, but yeah, I suppose I've probably had more of the ones when we've been together in joint consultations
Hmm.
where you've had those that have got oath problems. Um, but I
Yeah,
don't think they're that common, really, um, which is surprising, really, because
it's difficult. It's difficult because of the type of work, because you know that our work can be quite cyclical, where we'll have loads of people come with
yeah,
the same problem. So when we turn up and do a day of consultations where we have 10, 20 people come through the door, 10 of those 20 people might have a reincarnation
yeah,
problem. And then you'll go for months of not seeing anything. It really is weird that like seems to attract like in that.
no,
And you
definitely,
can talk about that in terms of, why that would be and stuff like that. But I think that's a reason for that. That's another podcast
yeah,
altogether. But people getting stuck and not being able to get out of doing the same thing over and over again for multiple lifetimes seems to be the
yeah.
most common basic
But I
one.
suppose
And it seems to be,
all of those have
sorry,
been with clients that are on magical paths. We
yeah,
don't see mundanes with particularly those
no.
problems. You've got to have reached a certain state where you are actually involving yourself on an energetic level that it's going to impact potentially multiple lives. Um,
Well, these people are essentially, when you're on a magical path, you're tinkering with the system, both the system as a whole and then your individual system, which can cause ripple effects. So, yeah, I think that's true to say from that perspective. But again, it's difficult because how do you judge magical knowledge level and ability and power? It's quite difficult thing to
yes,
do, isn't it?
yes, yes.
So it's like, um, but no, I mean, what? Okay, so what is some of the more sinister things? So if you imagine reincarnation as, would you say it's part of the natural system?
Yeah,
It's just a
I probably
natural
wouldn't.
part of the
I probably wouldn't.
architecture.
I don't like the word natural there, but um, that adds connotations that aren't necessary. It's part of the machine
Yeah,
of
of creation.
creation, energy transference, all those things. It's part of the machine. It's a mechanics thing, which is why I don't like the
Yeah,
word natural. It's a mechanics thing.
yeah. No, I get what you're trying to say. I just trying to use the term natural because I'm then thinking about going into when you start messing about and tinkering with.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like, I mean, it's difficult with machines as like basic machines, even computers and stuff like that. They're quite simple when you're comparing them to creation, for want of a better word, or the universe, or everything
yeah.
within the universe and outside of the universe is a little bit more complicated
But
when you're
then I
dealing with
but
that.
then I would consider the brain to be a very intricate machine. And to me, I would still use
Yeah,
the word machine when I refer to it
yeah,
because it's still a programming issue. So
yeah,
the fact that it is capable to do all of the things that it does simultaneously in all other directions through electrical impulses, to me, I would still kind of say yes. I would kind of compare the universe to a brain than I would a clock. But yeah, I get what you were trying to do. Sorry.
hmm. No, no, it's all right. It's just trying to, again, it's just such a difficult thing to explain, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, okay, so really when you're dealing with reincarnation, you're dealing with those big questions like what happens when you die and what is gods and deities and all that sort of thing. They're the big questions that are difficult to explain to someone and for them to fully grasp without knowing it. So when it comes to reincarnation and stuff like that, I've never suppose looked at it from the perspective of it's something that happens when you die. It's kind of like looking at it from a different
Yeah,
level. So you look
it's
at
something that
everything from a
it's
different
something that has
level.
happened, will happen, is happening.
Yeah. So when you're looking at, I don't know, I tend to revert to kind of engineer and programming. You're looking at the graphic user interface, you're looking at Windows or Apple or whatever. And then the next layer down, you've got kind of C or something. And then you've got hexadecimal, and then you've got binary. It's like, well, you're interacting with the universe on a level that you're just doing the physical, the physically seeing, all that sort of
Yeah,
thing. And then when you peel back that layer, that's the layer that psychics start to work, and understand and start to work in. But there are many levels beyond that. And those levels that are beyond that, it's really difficult for something such as the human brain and the human mind to really delve into. You won't find many people that speak binary.
no, no,
I mean, there are people that speak in clicks and whistles, but that's not really binary.
no. That's still a complicated language.
So I don't know how far to go with this podcast, because I like to go as deep as possible, and then people get creeped out and it makes people a little bit
Yeah,
uncomfortable, because partly because of the position that we're in, whereby people will come to us with really crazy, mad, dark problems, and that's not necessarily 99.999% of people.
no,
So I don't know whether to go into details about like the very rare occasion when super weird, crazy things have happened, because that's not really
reg-
what people probably listening to this are going to relate
no.
to. But at the same time, it's difficult to just stick to the basics when it comes to reincarnation, because it kind of the thought process and the you need to just get drawn in to how it works and experiences and stuff like that. I mean, if you're wanting to research and understand reincarnation, what would you recommend that someone does? Because it's no good just go to books, and it's really no good asking other people, really, either, is it?
Well, no. I don't necessarily have an issue with past life regression. I think if somebody's interested, then that's always an option. Equally, you've got just as many options with meditation, self-work, in order to kind of get to that level of where you want to. But it really, again, it always depends on what people want to do with that information. If you just want to
Yeah,
know
yeah,
it, then go and see a hypnotist and be regressed. What you're going to do with that information, if you're just doing it as a tourist, which is about the best, the best I can consider is that is tourism. It is, where was I at the last point? Where was I the point before that? Can I go and experience it for a few hours, walking around in an old pair of shoes in a memory? It depends on really what you want to do with that. Like I say, the sorts of clients that we see about it are because they've got an actual problem that needs fixing. I
yeah,
can't say, and I can't speak for you, but I can't say that I've actually particularly done any work with it that wasn't trying to remember where I put the book, or trying to remember where I put that memory about that time I did that thing. Like, to me, it's a bit like Alzheimer's. I remember what they look like, but I don't remember what it does. Um, and for me, it's trying to marry those two things up. Whereas, somebody that hasn't experienced those things, what purpose would they really have for understanding it?
right,
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that we're at that point in civilization now, population wise, where we're not our day is not full with providing food or making
yeah,
clothes. So much of that has been taken off into mechanisms that means that now we have time to sit and think about things you wouldn't normally sit and think about. And I think for the majority of people, reincarnation is just one of those.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, we're out of time for the regular podcast, but we'll carry on talking for the Patreon.